Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. Because this is Airwindows Distance3. Now, the whole idea behind this one is that I've recently put out Discontinuity. And Discontinuity does a pretty good job of simulating loudnesses, but it doesn't do anything as far as, distance and reverberation and stuff, and it doesn't do anything as far as sound darkening. It's basically the same thing that you get about modeling the discontinuities of literal air at the source the noise is being made. So we can look at it here and see that we've got a distance thing. That is, that reads in miles. And we've got discontinuity contained inside this, and then we got a dry wet. So if we play this audio again, we can do some of these things independently, like top dB could be increased to be like about 140 dB. But it still sounds quite far away. Or distance could be changed so that the distance could be a lot farther away. Whether or not the bass sound is intended to be super loud or not. So we can take that and we can also crank up the bass sound. Until it's basically a simulation of, like I said in an earlier video, the rock group disaster area from Douglas Adams's books. So why would you do this? You might do it in sound design if you were trying to make something convincingly seem really far away. You might do it in a mix if some of the elements of the mix, for instance, I can bounce over to a guitar sound, and we've still got it on, but we've turned everything back down again. So if we wanted that guitar to sound like it was a lot farther away when it is actually just a DI, you'd probably want to put in some kind of reverb. And I'm working on those. There's a lot going on. But in the absence of that, we can do the top dB, which is discontinuity, but we can also do distance. And remember, that's reading in miles, so very little of it is going to be needed in order to set this guitar way the heck back. Like this. So that's that same sound about a mile away, which I'm not sure how accurate that is, but you're certainly not getting the highs that you would. And if you take it much farther away, you're basically hearing nothing but the lows out of it. This is what existed in the original Distance plugin. And I did Distance2 to try to incorporate some of the effects out of how this works. And Distance2 didn't do as good of a job as Distance1 because I was trying to incorporate what discontinuity does now, but without actually using delay buffers. And so, yeah. But now I can do this. So what we've got now is a guitar that is meant to come off at about 115 dB or so, maybe a little bit more, because top dB refers to the top line. If you're looking at it in a DAW or a track editor of some kind, you'll see that the waveform fills up some of the space, and then if it was all totally clipped, it would fill up all the space. You'd have a sausage. If it was totally clipped, that would be the top dB that you're talking about. If it takes up very little space in the audio form, then the top dB that you'll use to get to a particular amount might be larger because the sound is only going to go up, so far. You do stuff like this. See, we've got a sound which is, it's like a guitar sound, and let's assume that we want it to be a distance, but not like right up front, so we'll put distance to be smaller. 0.2 miles is a reasonable distance for a guitar to be at where you would not be hearing as much brightness, but it is also not wildly different from the initial sound. And then we start fooling with top dB. Now, how loud might this be? We're going to try to make believe that it's like 105 dB or so, like it's a high watt stack or Marshall or something like that. It will go loud. What we've got it set at right now is 110. So we pull it down to roughly 105 or so, but the recording that I've got doesn't go all the way up to 0 dB. There's a little bit of space in there, and so what we get, that's not as loud as you would use if you were literally trying to make it go up to rock concert levels. So what's going to happen is when I push it up to around 110 or maybe a little more, what's going to happen is the tone is going to start to lock into place where it starts sounding like that big amp sound. And remember, I could push it to 140 and just distort everything like crazy, but that's not necessarily what we want to do. We're looking at taking this DI-like sound, which is a ISO box and a condenser microphone right up against the speaker, and make it sound as if it's quite a lot farther away without reverb. So let's give that a try. Again, we're going to leave distance alone. That is already taking off some of the brightness. And then we're going to dial up top dB until it hits that point that I'm looking for. 105. And there's 110. That's maybe slightly more than we even need. Let's hear what it sounds like when we go a little farther. And that's clearly a big amp sound. And then it's back down to a smaller amp sound. And a terrible mistake in the guitar playing there, but that doesn't matter because I am here to do plugins. I'm not here for you to hire me for my guitar playing. That's how it's done. This and this is also explaining a little bit of how discontinuity works, because there was a little confusion about that last week. And I've got a lot going on, so things are moving pretty fast. I'd like to cover that fairly well while I'm at it. We can take another track. For instance, this is an early demo track from something that I'm developing, a little thing called Console Axe, and use distance and top dB to fool with this one as we go. And again, top dB, it'll go from 70 to 140 dB, but you're probably going to tune in a sweet spot where a few dB in one direction or another is all you're going to need to lock in the tone you're after. The difference here is that Distance3 interleaves the filtering stuff from the original Distance, which was better than Distance2 as far as actually getting a good sound. It builds up the extreme lows nicely as well. You hear more of the thunder there, but what you don't hear is anything resembling reverb or ambience, because it doesn't actually do that part. You could probably put this on a reverb return as well if you wanted that to be big, huge, bassy, and far away sounding. And we'll fire this up and start playing with the top dB and the distance. So here's our raw track. Let's assume that we want to make this be even more distorted, because this is already using some of the stuff here. Like, this includes discontinuity in the mix stage. So we can do this to make the maximum gain seem extremely loud, but now it's a little crackly. So if we want to go farther away, let's go 3 miles away. Is that too far? Well, we could go even farther, and then we're only hearing that thump. What if it was a louder thump? Let's jump back so we can still hear the thump happening. Supposing we're trying to make that particular track, this here, sound like it's at some kind of giant event where it's extremely loud. We can make the low frequencies carry over because they carry over long distances real good. We're at 10 miles away, but what if we wanted it to sound like it was a lot louder and also that far away? 123 dB might not be enough. Let's sneak it up a little bit. And when we do that, it's maybe pushed to a little farther than we want. Because again, even with the sound as extreme as this, I'll bring it a little closer. We're in such subsonics that I'm not sure you can clearly hear what's going on. So you can plainly hear there's a distant snare drum in there. But this is maybe slightly more top dB than we need to make this sound work. So, a little less. And having taken the obvious distortion out of that, what we've got is a sound where we're doing completely fake distance and volume. And there's now real drums. We get closer. And again, no reverb. We could probably pull the volume on this back a tiny bit, because it exists in the original track. Then move a little closer. We're about 2 miles out now. And this is all being done in complete absence of any reverb, which is normally what you'd use to make something sound far away. And there you have it. Airwindows Distance 3 is being put out this week partly because I can further talk about discontinuity. If the talk about the top dB control helped you at all with regard to understanding what this one does, that also applies to discontinuity. You're going to look for sweet spots. You're going to look for not necessarily using it as an obvious distortion effect, but bringing it in until it conditions the sound just right. And the range of volume on that is going to be really wild. I was getting guitar sounds to be around, 110 or so, and the spot where it went from not enough to too much was very small in there. With the track that I just used, it was hovering around 120 or more. And with the vocal mic on this very video and this very recording, it's at 71. And that's the only way I was able to find to be able to get my vocal recording, which is with a neat little microphone. Sorry for that bonking noise. That microphone running into a Blackmagic camera, which is able to provide its own phantom power, is how I get my voice sound in these videos. And both of those things are pretty good. I think it does a really good job of doing that. But I needed to find a way to just take it over the final hurdle and make it just that much more believable, human sounding. None of your like cheap condenser microphone tizziness and brightness and stuff. It's not a dynamic mic, but I wanted it to have the kind of coherence and naturalness you'd get out of, for instance, a ribbon. And so I'm using discontinuity on the recording of the microphone for this very video. And that's what I do going forward. I hope you also find use for these recent plugins I'm putting out, namely Discontinuity and Distance 3. This Distance 3 is by request, because some people who watched me develop it really badly wanted this one. And so you're welcome. There you go. If you want me to do things by request and want to get me to do stuff, show up in my live streams and ask for them. That's where I was asked for Distance3, and so that's how this works. It's also, I can't help but look favorably on people who support my Patreon, but I'll keep doing stuff and putting it out without directly charging you for it anyhow, because I feel like some of the best musicians couldn't afford to join my Patreon. And back when I couldn't afford anything, I would have liked somebody to make software for me and stuff. And this, of course, is also, in addition to coming out in the form that you see, which is a retro VST hosted in Reaper. It still comes out as that, but you can also re-download Airwindows Consolidated, which is another couple weeks ago. Everything's moving really fast at the moment. And it is, as I speak, also contained in Airwindows Consolidated. So the same category, which I forget what it is now, where Distance and Distance2 live, this is going to basically be at the top of that category because it's that much better than Distance1 and Distance2, because you can condition the air, which is more important over distances that this deals with. It's more important to apply that nonlinearity if you're trying to accurately portray what a sound is like when it's like 1 to 10 miles away. You're going to see more of that effect. And yeah, when I say a lot is going on, believe me on that. Those who are following my live streams might know that I'm working on a meter plugin, and we're beginning to test that out. So if you know how to dig through my stuff and find your way to where that meter plugin lives, you can try downloading it. But I'm not going to tell you any more than that because it's not quite ready yet. But I figure people who are willing to work for it, knock yourself out. And I am bringing it up to speed as fast as I can. Once I have that and I'm confident with letting people see it, you're going to start seeing those evergreens, because I'm also working very hard on that. Evergreens is my project where I let you actually hear the classic recordings, the same kinds of things that people want me to put out console versions, like the console version to mimic the console used on Abbey Road and Dark Side of the Moon, and people figure that they need me to do that in order to be able to make those sounds. It's not true. You could do those sounds in a stock DAW if you really knew what you were doing, and if you had something like the metering plugin that I'm working on to guide you. But that's for another day. So for now, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.